Thank you. You actually connected the dots beautifully. So when you walked in on your seats, you would have found little note cards. The way we want to do Q&A is you write down your questions. We'll have someone walk around, collect your questions, and Dr. Amanda Burgess-Proctor will kind of pick from those questions, and hopefully we can get through a number of them. We're doing pretty good with timing, so we're very happy that we can, work with your questions. So to open the floor for the question and answer session led by Dr. Amanda Burgess-Proctor, who is an associate professor of criminal justice at Oakland University in Michigan. She insisted I say it's Oakland University in Michigan. She served as chair of the Division on Women and Crime from 2015 to 2017. And as I said before, she's my immediate predecessor. Her expertise is in intimate partner abuse, sexual assault, and other forms of gender-based violence. Her article in Feminist Criminology about intersections of race, class, gender, and crime is one of the most widely read articles in DWC's journal, Feminist Criminology. So, Dr. Burgess-Proctor, and is one of our graduate students collecting cards for questions? And if you want to take a minute or two to write down the questions, please identify yourself or your agency, one of those. Write down your question and pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Only one card? Okay, good. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. I have the easy job, right? I just get to stand up here and read questions. I'd like to thank everyone for participating, our panelists, all of the folks in attendance. This, as you might imagine, is a really incredible privilege for all of us to be here and to be speaking in this setting and to be able to not only share our expertise, but also to be responsive to your questions and be able to tailor some comments to your specific concerns or questions or interests. So, okay, I'm going to start reading. And I also have some other questions prepared too in the event that we have time to do that. So the first question, would you please grab the microphone for me, please? And there's a little mute button on the bottom. I'll do it for you. If you would like. Here. Oh, let's get that. Okay. First question. Yeah. Okay, the first question is for Dr. Clevenger. Did your work reveal any recommendation or best practice for meeting the needs of cyber abuse victims? Are there additional services or types of support in addition to traditional advocacy services that may better support victims of both in-person violence and cyber abuse? Thank you.
That's a great question. Whoever wrote
this is from Liz Blunt.
Yes, and so one of the things that it was great. So in doing this research, one of the things that I noticed, I did the interviews at rape crisis centers. And so the rape crisis centers did not have any information on cyber victimization. So they had intimate partner violence, they had sexual assault information, and they also had that in part of their counseling, but they did not talk about cyber. So to kind of do like a humble brag here, I had my students create information to put in the rape crisis centers about cyber victimization because it was part of a civic engagement project for our victimology class because they didn't have it. And so if you went in there and you were experiencing this, what people often found was, one, they didn't know what to do or how to cope with it. And so we have been working with different rape crisis centers to put that in there. And so I think we've done a pretty good job. The issue often, though, I will say, is some of the rape crisis centers, they can refer them to the material, but they don't understand sometimes what the crimes are. So I will say it's not perfect. I didn't solve this issue. We can give them some information, but the problem becomes more locally how they're going to get support. And so I'm hoping that will change, and I'm going to plug in up back again. Passing laws, I think, will close eyes to the fact that this is a crime and people do suffer.
Provide a little bit of context.
Yeah.
I'm from the Department of Defense.
Oh, okay.
Sexual assault defense response for their office. Very high visibility issue with this last year with the Marines United. And so we're really looking at sort of our sort of short-term answer was, oh, we already have this sort of support infrastructure in place. We'll just sort of direct these folks to our existing supports. And we want to make sure that just because we have existing supports to sort of support victims of sort of quote-unquote traditional sexual assault and partner violence and things like that, are they able to meet the needs of these folks who have these additional concerns?
So they are, but then they're not. They're able to do the in-person stuff great.
Right.
But the issue becomes, so if you're a revenge porn victim, what do you do?
Right.
And so the answer that I can give you is not really a lot that people can help you necessarily with. They were great with helping them cope with the anxiety or the depression, but in actual terms of logistics, they felt that was a challenge. Even with more traditional type cyber crimes like cyber stalking or cyber harassment, they still faced a challenge. I will say one of the rape crisis centers and the partner violence centers came up with this really great log for them to log all the different things so that when they went to law enforcement, they had it all there. And so I hate to say it depends on, because I feel like that's such a cop-out for me to say it depends, but it depends. But I think we're getting better, and I think as we understand what these crimes are, we can evolve towards that.
Okay. The next question is up for grabs. The question is, can any of the panelists discuss how girls involved in delinquency are impacted by these issues, which we have not talked much about. So I'm happy if anybody would like to, I can say a few words, or if, Dr. Kubina or anyone else would like to say something about girls' delinquency.
Well, I think one of the things I did mention in the panel is that when women are incarcerated, it certainly increases the odds that girls will engage in delinquent behavior, that they will also be, again, arrested and convicted, and certainly it increases the odds to not only that they're going to engage in criminal offending, but they're going to also do poorly in school, they're also going to suffer from anxiety and depression, and so it certainly, it not only affects the mother who's incarcerated, but the entire family, girls, siblings are also impacted.
Yes.
And with regard to data on victim services, anecdotally what I've been noticing in the work I've been doing is that a lot of girls don't access victim services because that means they have to disclose to parents, and they might not want to associate with like IPV, dating violence, stalking, or sexual violence, but they're very concerned about that. So that, to limit barriers in some way for girls to access services, even without parental support or provide support that way, that would be very useful to find a policy that would support them.
Okay, you get to hold on to that. Okay. Do I have other questions from the audience? I would love to be able to respond to specific ones. Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, I'll read it out loud here. Thanks. All right. This is to Dr. Fontaine from Dr. Boyle, who's at Virginia Tech. For those of us in academia, can you recommend a first few steps for learning how to translate work into policy and practice? What can we do?
Come to Urban. I would say it's easiest for, I think, folks in academia to develop really strong partnerships with the practitioners that are in wherever your school is, right? And in some ways, you'd have more credit than we would as folks coming from DC because you know the place. And then I think it really is meeting them where they are, talking basics. This is where basic research of how messed up stuff really is really helpful, where like moving away from the regressions and sort of just talking in very specific, but bite-sized information, kind of tidbits about like what the problems are, what you've learned from your research, have like your elevator speech, but it could really be into like layman's terms. And then the thing I think that's also important is that, you want to project that you're an expert, but so are they, right? They're dealing with the thing that they're dealing with every single day, and by and large, people are trying really hard. I do believe that. And so it's meeting them where they are. What are you dealing with? What can I help you with? And then having this interactive, dynamic conversation where you're both experts in what you do, and then realizing that we're probably not going to be able to move them from, really far, to the best policy or practice that we could create based on the best science, but moving them in like inches, incremental steps, is the way to go. And that happens over a long period of time. And it also needs to happen when you've got a strong champion, someone who's even willing to change. But it's difficult work, but I think that's where real change happens. And again, I think it's really critical to see them as experts in the thing that they're doing, and then trying to make the connection with where the change can happen in their processes.
Yes.
I'd actually like to respond to that question. So, when you are working with practitioners, I appreciate what Justin just said, consider them an expert. Also, when we go in as researchers and professors, typically we tend to have the approach, we know all the answers, right? And that really doesn't work. And the other thing is we just want to give them the answers and just walk back out. And say, okay, now it's your problem, you fix it. That doesn't work. What works is when you tell them, this is the data, this is what I've learned. Now you tell me, what would you like to see? What is the change? So let's say I want to work with a community which is a very high IPV rate. I'm going in as a researcher to collect data. But if I just tell them I'm here to collect data and I'll tell you what your data is telling you, they really don't care. What they're looking for is how do I bring this rate down? What am I going to do? So when you tell them I have this data, based on this data I'm going to give you solutions, and I'm going to give you A, B, C, and D solutions, and you can pick which you think will work for your community. And another thing which we as academics can do, which we do not realize, we have a lot of power. We have a lot of power to negotiate, not just say, let's say you're working with the law enforcement department. But as an academic, you're able to pick up the phone, call the mayor, call the council and say, hey, we worked with this. This is a problem. And we have policy suggestions. Can you line up behind us? Which in another way I call as coordinated community response. To get that going is quite a big deal. And that's the way you can actually really translate, because it's not just one agency, it's always a community, it's always dollars behind that community or whatever happens. So professors have a lot of pull in being able to do advocacy. We don't tap on those resources. And I think we should start doing that.
Okay, the next question is for Dr. Lovell, if you'd like to pass the microphone down to her. Yes, this question is from Keisha Downs at Howard University to Dr. Lovell. How can people who are... Are you here? How can people who are not as well versed in research make an impact on the sexual assault kit backlog and see real change in our respective communities?
That's probably one of the best questions I've ever received. And I think I'll start off by saying that various communities have approached how to test rape kits and how to follow up in different ways. Detroit has a bunch of rape kits as well, and they have no money, and so they literally have GoFundMes. They go to every single person they can possibly get, which also is a very sad state of affairs when you have to get $5 at a time to test something that is very squarely within the public realm to do. But that's the nature of some of this work. To me, the much larger thing of what can you do to do this and what can we do as a collective is starting from what one of the reporters, her name is also Rachel. Sometimes people refer to us as the Rachels, which is kind of weird. We are separate entities, but Rachel Bissell, who started really asking really hard questions to the Cleveland Police Department, like how many kids do you have? What are you doing? What are you doing? And She said, she told me once, she was like, her and another reporter started, they were their first coders, they looked at the first 300. She said, when we reported this, we thought that everyone was going to be so angry and that there was going to be this night, like, can you believe what we're looking at? Can you imagine that this has happened? Can you imagine, look at all these cases? Because remember, kids weren't tested, but lots of things were not done in these cases along with the kid. So the kid is just one symptom of a much bigger issue as it relates to how the criminal justice system responds to sexual assault. And she said the most depressing thing from all of this is that there's now, even to some extent, been very little change in Cleveland, within the Cleveland Police Department, within others, about radical transformation and that big disconnect between how can we not still, after all this, still not care. And so I think as all citizens, and we all have issues that we care and are passionate about, but this gets at the very core of how we think of public safety. For example, half of the backlog rate kids in Cleveland are where victims are walking or waiting. That is a terrifying phenomenon that affects every single person, but disproportionately people who live in marginalized communities and economically depressed communities. So I think we should be calling our legislators, we should be talking to people here, we should be doing more about this is unacceptable. It doesn't matter what political party you belong to, we should be doing the right thing by victims and constantly getting pressure to have more STAY nurses, to have more police officers. If you understood how heavy loads that most police officers carry who investigate sexual assault, it would be frightening to almost everyone who sees how little resources are given to sex crimes units and to investigate sex crimes. To looking at, we need more prosecutors. We need way more victim advocates. Some prosecutors have maybe one victim advocate for every single victim that goes through the criminal justice system. We need community victim support as well through community-based advocates. So I think depending on where you come into that, if you're a STAY nurse, push through that. If you are just a regular citizen, you constantly call your department. But I think that the rape kit stuff is so shocking to people because it is that Band-Aid, and when you pull it back, you see such a big gaping hole in how women primarily have been treated within the criminal justice system.
Okay. Our next question is for Dr. Kobina. Thank you very much. This is from Lindsay Geralds with the U.S. Sentencing Commission. Dr. Kobina, can you please speak to the impacts of parole and probation requirements, such as drug tests, home detention, advance notice regarding changing residence, on the reintegration of women?
Sure. So I will say, when we talk about probation and parole requirements, it's certainly, there's numerous conditions, and I don't know if you there's certainly many conditions that people on probation and parole have to fulfill, including whether it's going to drug treatments, mental health treatments, either POs, and doing this while having children and having to transport to these places can be incredibly difficult. And we know that probation and parole officers can certainly incarcerate people for violating some of the conditions of probation and parole. And so I think it's certainly necessary to, some states that have seen reductions in declines in prison populations have reduced the number of technical violations that they have provided to people on probation and parole. Because there is certainly a problem when we incarcerate, when 1/3 of folks who are in prison are there not for committing a new crime, but for committing a technical violation. And I think some states, again, are beginning to look at these issues, largely because we can no longer afford to continue to incarcerate people for long periods of time for technical or rule violations.
Wonderful. Any more questions from the audience? I'd like to give you a chance to do that. How are we doing on time? I'm not convinced that that clock is accurate, by the way. We have time for a few more questions? Yeah? Okay. Let's talk to somebody who has not gotten to speak. How about Dr. Richards? There is significant media attention paid to the issue of due process for students who are accused of Title IX violations, and there is some concern that the university Title IX investigations are functioning more like a star chamber and less like an independent fact-finding mission. So how can we reconcile recommendations that you provided, or how can we ensure that the process protects the due process rights of accused students and also ensuring supports for students who've been victimized?
So procedural fairness is obviously at the heart of Title IX, right? Because Title IX ensures educational opportunities for all students, not just female students, right? I think that the steps that we have to take to really address procedural fairness include clarity from OCR, first and foremost, because there's been a lot of turmoil in the last year about what OCR guidance really looks like in terms of processing and adjudicating allegations of Title IX violations on campus. We are anticipating new developments from OCR that are going to go through a notice and comment period. So one thing that ordinary citizens, students, academics can do is go to Know Your Nine, that website, and think about hosting a training regarding the public notice and comment period, right? So get informed about how you can participate in that process, because I can tell you in 2001, when the new guidance went through a notice and comment period, there were 18 comments. I will be thoroughly disappointed if in this next iteration, all we have are 18 comments that OCR has to respond to regarding the proposed new guidance, right? I mean, I hope that just from this panel, there are 50 comments, right? Like, we need to make sure that our elected and appointed officials take procedural fairness seriously, right? So I would say clarity first, then training, right? Because we need to train institutions appropriately about what's expected of them. So clarity, training, compliance with that that process, right? Monitoring of whatever procedures are put forward by OCR, and then accountability for those procedures. Because there is nothing in the Title IX guidance, the Clarity Act, or Campus Save that detracts from due process rights of students. There's nothing in that guidance that would prevent a student from having a fair and impartial hearing, or procedural fairness for a complainant, right? A student who makes an allegation. It's how universities interpret and apply those standards. That's when we see problems, right? That's when we have civil litigation that sometimes results in a finding of civil rights violation, which in my opinion means the system works, right? If universities don't comply, they violate a student's rights, and that student sues them civilly, and they win, right? I mean, that was the system working.
Okay. How about we have a few more minutes left. How about some policing questions, maybe for Dr. Raby-Hemp and Dr. Kringen? So both of you talked a little bit about these expectations of policing. Dr. Raby-Hemp, you talked a little bit about the upper body strength requirements, and Dr. Kringen, you talked a little bit about outdated sort of views of policing. And so I'm wondering if either of you could talk a little bit about how that squares with sort of the current conversations about policing and trying to make specific recommendations around some of those perceptions or narratives that might serve as barriers.
Thank you. I will speak first and then Dr. Kringen can speak next. We know that when we look at some of the barriers for women in policing today, one of the frustrating aspects about these barriers is that there's not a whole lot of empirical research that suggests that the barriers are necessary. So for instance, the one that I mentioned about utilizing upper body strength as a test for policing, what we see is typically this is a test that is done once for entrance into policing, and then in most agencies, at least most municipal agencies, that test is never repeated, which really does call into question then, just from a common sense perspective, of how necessary that is.
to women coming into policing. Now, I will review for you all the very positive benefits that women bring to law enforcement that I spoke about, and Dr. Prengen too. But the question is, when you're balancing those things, right, the peacekeeping mechanisms for women, better communication skills, taking victimization reports seriously, when we weigh those things against upper body strength, the question is, right now, today, which one of those things is more important, right, in the future of law enforcement moving forward as far as skills for police? And so what we're asking for is a common sense approach to evaluating some of the requirements for law enforcement today. I'll hand it over to Dr. Prengen.
Yeah, and I would agree, because one of the problems that we have, and we see this with police departments, is that they want to do more community engagement. They know communication is important, and that they're focused on this, yet we're testing for the wrong things. And we've had these testing processes for the past 30 years, and they haven't really changed. So we said written exam, physical fitness exam, oral examination, which varies by jurisdiction. And so as a jurisdiction might be under a consent decree and find out, hey, we have a physical fitness test that's problematic, they change their testing and they don't tell their nearest neighbor, or there's no sort of one-stop shop to actually disseminate that type of information. And then I would say there's also a societal, I think, issue regarding police, is that we sort of say, well, it's police departments, kind of the image of police departments, yet we as a society sort of say, well, what are police supposed to be doing? And so in a lot of ways, informally, we reinforce this narrative that women can't do this, that you have to be the crime fighter. So if you look at the media perceptions of policing, it's still very stereotypically like this crime-fighting image, which we know isn't necessarily where police departments even want to be, yet popular media sort of says, no, this is who we should be. And so even though I didn't tag into the question related to girls, I think that's part of it, is that girls are socialized at a young age, and when I made the comparison to STEM, to say, you can't do this job, right? And they can't. And so part of that is sort of society changing their perception about what it is to be a police officer, and how do we actually encourage women and girls at a young age to say, this is part of the job and an occupation that you can do and are fully qualified to do, and will do very well.
And then changing the condition of policing to be acceptable to...
Yeah, absolutely. And then making sure that, to make sure that it's still successful, because there are things like Dr. Ray talked about, where it's determining policies, family friendly, and all of those types of things that are really important. Absolutely. Thank you.
I mean, if you have one more question, otherwise I'll come up.
Well, I will tell you, there's a discrepancy.
That's not the right time.
Yeah. So we...
We'll do one more question if anybody has...
I want to be respectful of people's time. Dr. Menjivar and Dr. Addington have not had individual questions, and so if you'd like, we could take a few minutes to do that. But I want to be respectful of your time because we're past the 12:15. Yeah? Everyone okay? Yes? Okay. For the question for Dr. Menjivar, there's some concern about people perhaps misrepresenting or exaggerating claims in order to circumvent, these asylum policies, or claims of asylum to circumvent immigration laws. So what do you make of that, and how can you respond to lawmakers who might be concerned about this particular claim?
Yeah, I would advise people who are concerned about this to inform yourselves. There's plenty of information. The Latin American Librarian of Congress was here in the audience. She has an amazing array of information here in the Jefferson Building. I happen also to be the person in charge of collecting all research done on Central America and about Central America, and it is stored at the Library of Congress. There are reports, there are books, there is all sorts of evidence that shows the conditions that women are fleeing from. And so I would encourage people to make use of this amazing resource right here to inform yourselves.
Okay, thank you. And we'll give the last question to Dr. Addington. The last question, I'll bring in your mic in a second. So you mentioned in your remarks that new data collection or improved data collection efforts would be needed. So in your view, what would those look like? What would be the best practices for improving our data collection efforts regarding improving justice for women and girls?
In the next 5 hours. Because I know everyone, and I appreciate everyone bearing with me with data. Because we should make this work. Studying, I thought, should we data? How would it work? Because, all of what we're talking about requires data that has evidence-based information, and that's what we can bring to the practitioners, and learning from that. So I very much appreciate that, because we're nowhere without understanding where they're coming from. And being humble enough to appreciate the knowledge that they have that they can inform us. But there's so many areas to go on, but one of the things I think we haven't talked too much about is the victim services area, and that's really important for women, women and girls, because they use these services so much and rely on them. And the idea of better understanding what needs are out there, so and that are not being addressed, because that's information we can bring to the providers to understand that. And also the idea of how it works, because we talked about policing and some of those issues, initially the sexual victimization units, and that's as soon as your police department actually is large enough to have a specialized unit. But do victims go to the police and they get directed to victim services? And what does that information look like? How well are they partnering? But some of the agencies are terrific with it. It's like a one-stop shop almost. But others are not. And also, do victim services then recommend going to the police, reporting, and that sort of thing? So getting a better understanding of that dynamic of how victims access services, what services they access, and barriers to those services. I think getting some of that just basic understanding, that just descriptive work. Forget about the logistical regression crap. But that basic work is really needed. And how to get that is tough, because we've got 5 victims, basically. And so to augment something like the National Crime Victimization Survey that BGS collects, and having a special supplement, we don't need to get this every time from victims. We want balance, burdening victims, because once we have them, I want to ask them 100 questions. And we don't want to do that, but to be careful and mindful of their experiences, but also how can they inform our work, and so that we better can understand the patterns, how to improve those services. And also, I'm a quantitative person, but I appreciate the qualitative nature of this, because we need both. I love mixed methods, because I think that's really important. But that requires new data developments and investing in it, basically money. Think of a number. Everyone who's investing can invest in data. Think of a number and double it, and that's still not enough. Okay, basically, that's what we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have concluded. Thank you for being so wonderful.
I want to thank all of you for being here today. I also want to thank our graduate students from George Mason University. I just want to be sure they're all George Mason, for helping us facilitate this. They're local here. They came at the behest of Dr. Cynthia Lam, and they were so helpful. So thank you so much. I thank each and every one of you in the audience. I hope you registered, or if you didn't sign up before, you put your name there and email there so we can get you the policy essays. We will have YouTube videos of all the presentations. So in case you need to hear something, or even more importantly, if you need to use that video to advocate for some change or something different, please feel free to use them. They will be available on our website in a couple of days, and we will share it with all of you. Thank you so much. And that concludes our session.